Now, what I would now like to look at, and we'll look at this a little bit, is some of the ways that this is very powerful in language and social organization. And I'm going to look at a man with a 3-word vocabulary. You'll see Candy and I, younger versions of us, in the talk. This was my father, and he had a very severe stroke, and the stroke left him able to speak only 3 words: yes, no, and and. And despite that, he was a very, very powerful speaker in conversation. And I think if you were to look at either linguistics or anything, you'd figure somebody only able to produce a single word is not going to be a great speaker. So how was that possible? Well, first of all, he did have some other semiotic resources. He had very rich prosody, he had gesture, and in particular, he had the ability to understand what other people were doing. So since I have more time than I do sometimes, I'll just give you a simple example. At this point, somebody's given his daughter, my sister Pat, over there on the left, this calendar for Christmas. And
look at that one.
So all he's saying, he's not producing any language structure, but he's producing rich prosody. And I think that you can hear in his prosody through his a stance. He's admiring what he's looking at, and he's showing the referent of what he's looking at by having the calendar toward him. You know that he is commenting on the calendar. So even without any words, he's able to build a rich action. And now we'll look at this in a very simple, but I think very interesting example. Now what's happened here is that Candy and Chil and I are sitting in his kitchen. He lived in New Jersey. And we're talking about how much snow they've had. And I think, I don't know, some of you, does anybody have trouble understanding what's being played when the tape is being played? Okay, so I'm going to play this now, and I hope you can understand it, and the transcript's right there.
You haven't had that much this year, right?
No, not this year. Then there was some, there's still some around.
There was some, but last year, whew. Last year? Or the year before that?
Yeah.
Was everybody able to understand that clearly? Why don't I play it just one more time?
You haven't had that much this year, right?
No, not this year. Then there was some, there's still some around.
There was some, but last year, whew. Last year? Or the year before that?
Yeah.
Okay, the question I want to focus on is who's speaking in line 14, or the year before last. And going back on distinctions made by Irving Goffman when he deconstructed the speaker, we could certainly say that it's Candy's voice that's being heard. And moreover, Candy's the one that produces this syntactically complex utterance. But to some extent, is she the author? Is she the person taking responsibility for that utterance? Because if you look at line 12, just about 2 seconds earlier or less, she said something different. She said last year. And why now is she saying the year before last? And it's because Chil has cut in, and with his no, 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 he's objected to what she is saying. And she's now trying, and also clearly he's the big expert, he's the one that lives in the area. And by looking at the objection, Candy doesn't have to figure what does no, no, no mean in isolation, but she can inspect her own talk, see what might have been wrong with it, and provide an alternative version that he can either accept or reject. And we'll look at that a little bit more. Okay, so what does his no do? He isn't saying no, no, no just in isolation. He's saying no, not last year. In the same we saw with the kids, his operations, his no, is performing operations on what Candy said, and it's accumulatively incorporating into his talk the rich structure that was created by Candy. So with only a single word, said 3 times, he's able to make a complicated statement. No, not last year. But this only emerges through the way in which both talk and action are being built through cooperative transformations. So Chil's impoverished lexicon is filled up with Candy's rich semantics. Okay, and a way to look at this then is if we take Peirce's notion of the sign, where he said assign something which stands to somebody for something in some respect or capacity. Well, first of all, no, no, no indexically incorporates. And by indexically, I mean it's operating on the closest thing. It's like pointing toward it. That's the thing you know. It indexically incorporates what someone else just said. But at the same time, the no, no, no is a symbol. It's recognized through convention rather than through inherent resemblance. And as a symbol, he's doing something. He's objecting. He's transforming what Candy said. He's not saying it's right. He's completely disagreeing with what she just said. So in this sense, the speaker is distributed across multiple utterances. And you know, there's a prejudice, I think, in formal linguistics and even in conversation analysis for what you might call a punctual vision of the speaker. That you think that the speaker exists in a single body and the utterance exists at a single moment in time. But the resources for what's being said here are distributed across Chil's no and Candy's, the talk that it's operating on, and also multiple bodies. And let's just take a look at the video of this now. I'll look at this rather quickly, but...
You haven't had that much this year, have you?
No, not this year. Though there was some, there's still some around.
There was some, but last year, whoo. Or the year before that.
Yes.
Okay, I'll play it again. I want to just go over the end of it real quick.
No, not this year. Though there was some, there's still some around.
There was some, but last year, whoo.
I will just go quickly. He actually gets Candy's gaze again. She's turned and looked toward Chuck, and he gets her gaze again. Notice also how his body goes into this alert thing. One of the things I think that you could see in his body is he's not acting as a recipient or hearer for something that Candy's telling, but he's acting as kind of a co-speaker. In other words, he's checking if the words that Candy produces are in fact the words that should be spoken at this time. You'll also see this gesture that exactly tracks his utterance.
The year before that.
Yeah.
As it goes, the year before last. And it's argued by a lot of people that gestures are basically speakers' activities rather than hearers. Well, in a way, you have the whole gesturing process, again, distributed across multiple actors and multiple bodies. Candy provides the language, while Chil provides the gesture that is tied to that language. Then he drops his body
You
at
haven't
that.
had that much this year, have you?
I didn't, I want to stop that.
This year.
Okay, I'll
Though
let
there
play.
was some, there's still some around.
Let me turn that off for a sec. It's off,
The
okay.
year before that.
Yes.
Okay, so what does this mean? In most thinking in every field, from linguistics to sociology to moral philosophy, etc., you begin by positing an actor, such as the ideal speaker-hearer, who's fully endowed with all the abilities required to perform the cognitive, linguistic, social, or moral processes being theorized. So if you're going to enter into a social contract, even with a very liberal philosopher such as John Rawls, you're going to have to be a full-fledged individual capable of entering that contract. So in this sense, anybody who arrives on the scene, like Chil, with impoverished abilities, or a young child, or a person suffering from Down syndrome or something, they're outside the sphere of how social scientists theorize the competence of human actors. And I think that's a really major problem. Now, what I think of here, one way of thinking about this is metaphor, if you want. How would you get, suppose you have a very, very quickly flowing river and you want to get from one side to the other. How would you do it? Well, the way we do it in America, etc., is we'd make a boat, and inside the boat we'd put a big powerful motor and we'd burn a lot of fossil fuel to get across the river. In fact, this is in Basel, Switzerland, and it's a ferry boat. The way the ferry boat works is it doesn't have a motor. There is a cable that's stretched across the river. The current is coming in this direction. It's a quite powerful current. And the boat is attached to that cable with another cable. So all that has to happen is that the driver of the boat, the captain, whatever he is, he uses his rudder to turn the boat so that it's sidewards to the current. And as the current comes down, it pushes the boat forward across the river. So in this sense, you're using the river itself as your power source in order to get across it. And this is the way I kind of see what Chil does. Instead of acting as an isolated, self-contained actor, he participates in the unfolding flow of language and interaction and intervenes in that flow in order to build the action that he wants at that point. So instead of starting from this picture of an ideal actor and going into everybody's mental life. And look, this is in spades, Searle, everything under the sun. That's the way Chomsky, it's the way just basically everybody thinks. I would think that the place we want to look for things is in a multi-party interactive field that's constituted through the actions of multiple actors with diverse abilities. Now, in this case, Chil can make meaning by drawing upon the resources and abilities of other actors. We could look at young children. We could look at the ability to make meaning in situations where you don't fully know a language, etc. And my own sense is that by a focus on the fully competent, isolated, self-contained entity, including psychology, we've ended up with a very distorted picture of human beings. I think that human beings are intrinsically social creatures, and not just because they get along with each other or something, but social because our ways of building action are in fact ones that are built through relying upon abilities and contributions of others in that sense. Now, I want to go very quickly over how this is cooperation. So, Chil performs actions. Everybody builds action by performing operations on materials constructed by somebody else. So he does his no, no, no on something that Candy did. And that something else, I'm just for a term, I'm going to call it public substrate. Okay, and then when he says no, 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 he creates a new substrate. And Candy can operate on his no, no, no to change, to produce a relevant next action that involves a transformation of what she said first. And in fact, that goes on and on and on. So there's accumulation as well. Chil's no's incorporate language structure created by somebody else. The structure accumulates. And Candy, in the year before last, she accumulatively incorporates with transformation everything that's gone before. She's operating on Chil's no, but at the same time, she's reusing the first thing that she said the last year, but transforming it into something different. So Candy and Chil intricately participate in each other's actions. Again, we inhabit each other's actions while defining ourselves as distinct, differentiated actors with unique positions. Again, the speaker is distributed across multiple utterances and bodies. You're getting other forms of semiosis other than language, like gesture, implicated in this process. And what you're doing is you're integrating into a common action diverse elements from diverse semiotic fields, language structure in the body, and from diverse actors.